Walk into any big box store and the smart speaker section looks completely harmless. Just small, glowing cylinders sitting neatly on shelves, all promising to make your life easier. A staff member might walk over and say, "Oh, they all basically do the same thing." And that right there, that's exactly where most people get caught. Because here's what nobody tells you when you're standing in that aisle. The cheapest models aren't just smaller versions of the expensive ones. They're often missing microphones. They're missing processing power. Some of them can't even pick up your voice accurately from across the room. And the most expensive ones? A lot of the time, you're paying for a louder speaker, not a smarter one. There's a real difference between those two things, and the packaging won't tell you which one you're holding. Retailers don't make this easy on you either. The same brand might quietly sell two different versions of what looks like the exact same speaker, depending on which store chain you're in. One version responds instantly, the other lags, misunderstands your words, or just sits there like it didn't hear you at all. And those in-store demos? They're set up in controlled environments with perfect lighting, strong Wi-Fi, and acoustics that have nothing to do with your kitchen, your living room, or your home network. That's how people, good, careful shoppers, end up bringing home a device that looked amazing on the shelf and then frustrates them every single day. And once it's out of the box, returning it becomes its own headache. So today we're doing this properly. We're ranking 8 major smart speaker brands you'll find at Amazon, Best Buy, Walmart, Target, and Costco. We're going from the worst traps all the way up to the ones that are actually worth bringing home. If you're over 60 or you're buying for someone who is, this is the video to watch before you spend a single dollar. Let's start at the bottom. Number 8. Off-brand budget. Smart speakers. You've seen these. They show up on flash deal tables, clearance end caps, and those limited time banners that stores use to move product fast. The price looks incredible, sometimes under $20, and the box uses all the right words: smart, voice-activated, easy setup. Here's what the box doesn't say. The microphones on these devices are often so weak that unless you're standing directly in front of the speaker, it simply won't catch your voice. If you're in the kitchen and you call out a question from across the counter, there's a real chance the device either doesn't respond or picks up something completely different from what you said. For anyone with hearing difficulty, that's not just annoying. It creates a situation where you end up raising your voice just to control a device that was supposed to make things easier. The software on these off-brand units is another problem. Some of them receive 1 or 2 updates after purchase and then get abandoned completely. The company has already moved on to the next product, which means the one you bought gets slower, glitchier, and less reliable over time. Not better. Wi-Fi stability is a consistent complaint. These speakers drop connections, take a long time to reconnect, and add a delay to almost every interaction. And the sound? It gets distorted quickly once you push the volume up past the midpoint. People who bought these describe it the same way over and over. It works for about a month, and then it starts becoming unreliable. The bottom line on off-brand budget speakers is this: they're cheap at purchase and expensive in frustration. And frustration with technology isn't just inconvenient. For someone who was hoping a smart speaker would genuinely help with daily tasks, a device that doesn't work properly can put you off the whole idea entirely. That's a real cost. Moving up from here, you'd expect the major brands to be more reliable. And mostly they are. But even some well-known names carry their own limitations, just packaged more attractively. Number 7. Apple HomePod Mini, older stock units. This one requires a bit of explanation because the HomePod Mini isn't a bad product. For the right person, it works well. The problem is that older stock units are still floating around clearance sections, bundle deals, and refurbished listings, and they're being sold to people who may not realize what they're getting into. The sound quality is genuinely good for a speaker of that size. Apple builds hardware well, and the HomePod Mini feels solid and well-made, But sound quality and smart speaker quality are two different things. And this is where the HomePod Mini runs into trouble. Siri, Apple's voice assistant, still struggles with anything more complex than a basic request. Ask it to play a song, set a timer, or tell you the weather, and it handles that fine. Ask it to help you manage a reminder across different apps, control a non-Apple smart home device, or give you a detailed answer to a practical question, and the experience gets inconsistent fast. The bigger issue is the ecosystem lock. To get the most out of a HomePod Mini, you really need to already be using an iPhone, an iPad, and ideally several other Apple products. The speaker is built to work inside that world. Outside of it, the smart features feel limited and the setup process becomes more complicated than it needs to be. People who bought this describe it as a nice speaker that doesn't feel truly smart. And that's an honest summary. If you're already deep in the Apple ecosystem and you find one at a good clearance price, it can work. But if you're buying it expecting a full smart home experience, the way the other brands offer, you're likely to feel like something's missing. Number 6. Amazon Echo Pop. Walk through almost any retail store right now and you'll see this one front and center on an end cap display. It's small, it's affordable, it has the Amazon name on it, and the price point is designed to make it look like an obvious entry point into smart speakers. And it is an entry point. That's both its strength and its limitation. The Echo Pop uses Alexa, which is a genuinely capable voice assistant. Alexa handles shopping lists, reminders, timers, smart home commands, and general questions well. The smart home compatibility is broad. More devices work with Alexa than with most other platforms. So if you have smart lights, a smart thermostat, or a smart lock, there's a strong chance the Echo Pop can connect to them. But the hardware is stripped down in ways that matter in daily use. The speaker is physically small, and that means limited bass and limited room coverage. In a bedroom or a small home office, it can work reasonably well. In a kitchen or a living room, you'll notice the sound feels thin and doesn't carry. There's also a pattern some users notice over time. Alexa on the Echo Pop will occasionally insert suggestions that sound like recommendations but are actually promotional. It's subtle, but it happens. You ask a question and the answer comes with a product suggestion attached. Buyers describe it accurately as a starter version of Alexa. It does what it's supposed to do, but you're clearly not getting the full experience. For someone buying their very first smart speaker to test the concept, it's an acceptable starting point. For someone expecting a complete, comfortable daily experience, it tends to leave people wanting something more. Number 5. Google Nest Mini, second generation. This one is still heavily promoted in bundles, holiday deals, and carrier promotions. And on the surface, it seems like a strong option. Google's voice recognition technology is genuinely impressive. When it comes to understanding natural language the way real people actually speak, Google Assistant is hard to beat. Ask it a question, and it answers accurately. Ask it to set a reminder with specific conditions, and it handles it. Ask it to help you navigate a complex request, and it follows along better than most competitors. The intelligence inside this device is real. The problem is what's carrying that intelligence. The speaker hardware in the Nest Mini is small and underpowered. For voice commands and quick interactions, that's fine. But for music, for audiobooks, for anything where you actually want to hear the sound filling the room, it falls short. The output is thin. It works at close range in a quiet space. In a busy kitchen or an open living room, it struggles to be heard clearly. There's also a recognition delay that shows up when your Wi-Fi is under load. When other devices in the home are active, the Nest Mini can pause before responding. It's not constant, but it's noticeable. The buyers who like this device tend to use it for information and reminders. The buyers who get frustrated with it expected something that sounded better. The best way to understand it is that it has a very smart brain and a weak voice. Those two things together make it excellent at one set of tasks and disappointing at another. All right, let's pause for a second. If this has already saved you from a bad smart speaker deal, hit subscribe right now because the next four we're covering are where things get genuinely surprising. And the top two in particular are ones most retailers actively steer people away from because the margins are lower and the pitch is harder. Here's what the pattern has shown us so far. Budget devices cut corners on microphones and software support. Mid-range devices often do one thing well and something else poorly. And the devices that actually feel effortless in daily life, those require a bit more intention to find. There's something else worth knowing before we continue. A lot of the exclusive models sold at specific retail chains are slightly modified versions of standard products. The modifications usually go in one direction: fewer microphones, reduced sound, hardware, or older firmware installed to reduce manufacturing costs. The box looks the same. The price looks like a deal. But the product performing in your home is not the same as the one being reviewed online. Price drops don't always mean better value. Sometimes the cheaper version is just older hardware repackaged to clear inventory before a new model arrives. That's not a conspiracy, it's standard retail practice. Knowing it exists helps you ask better questions before you buy. Now let's get into the top four. This is where the real quality starts to show. Number 4, Amazon Echo, 4th generation. This is the one retailers push as the standard upgrade. You've got the little one, ready for the full version? That pitch works because the Echo 4th generation is genuinely a step up from the entry-level models. It's not a trick, it's a real improvement. The sound is fuller and more balanced than the Echo Pop. Bass is present without being overwhelming. In a medium-sized room, a kitchen, a bedroom, or a smaller living area, the Echo 4th generation can fill the space with sound that actually feels complete rather than flat. The Alexa integration here is the same as on the smaller devices, but the hardware can run it more consistently. Voice recognition across the room is reliable. You don't need to raise your voice or move toward the speaker to get a response. It picks up commands accurately, even when background noise is present, dishwasher running, television on in another room, that kind of thing. Smart home compatibility through Alexa remains one of the broadest in the industry. If you've already started building out smart home devices, or if you're planning to, the Echo 4th generation works with most of them without any complicated configuration. The one thing that carries over from the smaller Amazon devices is the occasional sponsored suggestion in responses. It doesn't happen constantly, but it's a pattern worth knowing about. Ask for a product, recommendation, and the answer may include an Amazon-promoted option rather than a purely neutral one. People who buy this speaker tend to be happy with it. Not thrilled, happy. It does almost everything well without doing anything perfectly. For most buyers, that's actually the right outcome. It's the safe middle choice, and it earns that position honestly. But if you want something that genuinely elevates the experience in sound quality, in intelligence, in how the whole interaction feels, the next three are worth your full attention. Number 3, Google Nest Audio. This is where the experience starts to shift noticeably. When you go from the mid-range options to the Google Nest Audio, the first thing you notice is the sound. Not in a subtle way, in a way that's immediately obvious. The Nest Audio is designed to fill a room. The audio is clear across the volume range, with real warmth in the mid-range and enough bass to make music feel complete rather than compressed. For people who listen to music, podcasts, or audiobooks regularly, the difference between this and the Nest Mini, or any of the lower-ranked devices, is not a small one. Google Assistant on the Nest Audio is fast. Not fast for a smart speaker, just fast. Responses come back quickly, answers are accurate, and the natural language recognition handles the way most people actually speak, including longer or more complex requests, better than most competitors. If you use Google services regularly, Gmail, Google Calendar, Google Maps, the Nest Audio integrates with them in ways that make everyday tasks more convenient. Asking it to check your schedule, set a reminder that syncs with your calendar, or get directions works the way the marketing suggests it should. The one area where it trails behind Amazon's ecosystem is smart home device compatibility. Alexa still works with a broader range of third-party smart home products. If your home already has several smart devices running on Alexa, switching the central speaker to Google requires checking compatibility first. That's not a deal breaker, but it's a real consideration. People who own this speaker consistently describe it as the best-sounding option under $100 to $120. That's not a small thing. Sound quality directly affects how much you actually use the device, and a speaker you enjoy listening to is one you'll reach for instead of ignore. Number 2. Amazon Echo Studio. Most people walk right past this one. It's bigger. It costs more. The shelf display doesn't always explain what separates it from the standard Echo. And because most buyers are looking for something small and affordable, the Echo Studio gets overlooked constantly. That's a real miss. The Echo Studio is built around sound performance in a way that the other Amazon devices simply are not. The bass is deep and physical. You feel it, not just hear it. The soundstage is wide, meaning music doesn't feel like it's coming from a single point in the room. It spreads, it layers, and it fills a larger space without distortion. For anyone who genuinely cares about how music sounds at home, this is a fundamentally different experience than anything else in the Amazon lineup. It supports higher quality streaming formats and spatial audio. If you're subscribed to a streaming service that offers high-definition audio, Amazon Music HD, for example, the Echo Studio is one of the few smart speakers that can actually deliver on that quality rather than compressing it down. The Alexa smart home integration is the same strong ecosystem as the standard Echo, which means all the compatibility benefits carry over. Voice recognition is accurate and reliable, and the long-term software support from Amazon on this model has been consistent. The footprint is larger than the other options. It won't disappear on a small shelf or a narrow counter. You need to be intentional about where you place it. But people who own this speaker talk about it the way you talk about something that genuinely changed how you experience your home. They describe it as a mini home theater speaker, not because it replaces a full system, but because it delivers the kind of sound quality you don't usually expect from a single speaker on a table. This is the right choice for anyone who wants to take the sound experience seriously. For a smaller room or a quieter use, it may be more than you need. But for an open living space where you actually want music to sound like music, this is the one. Number 1. Sonos Era 100. There's a reason this one is at the top, and it's not because of hype or brand recognition. Most of the people buying smart speakers at big box stores walk past the Sonos section without stopping. The price point is higher. The brand name isn't as immediately familiar as Amazon or Google, and the staff in most stores are less trained to explain what makes it different. What makes it different is that everything works consistently, reliably, and for a long time. The sound quality on the Sonos Era 100 is exceptional across the full volume range. At low volume in the morning, it sounds warm and clear. At higher volume in the evening, it stays controlled. Nothing gets harsh. Nothing distorts. Nothing loses its shape. That consistency across listening conditions is harder to achieve than it sounds, and it's what separates audio equipment that performs in a store from audio equipment that performs in your home. The Sonos ecosystem is built around multi-room audio, and that architecture gives the Era 100 an advantage that single-room speakers can't match. If you decide later to add a second Sonos speaker in another room, they sync together seamlessly. Music moves with you. You don't have to restart reconfigure, or fiddle with settings. It just works the way it's supposed to. Firmware support from Sonos is consistent and long-term. This is not a company that ships a product and moves on. Updates are delivered regularly, and they genuinely improve performance over time rather than just fixing bugs. For anyone who's been burned by a device that worked well for 6 months and then quietly degraded, the reliability record here matters. The Era 100 also works with multiple voice assistants depending on how you configure your setup. You're not locked into one platform, which gives you flexibility that most smart speakers don't offer. Here's the honest way to think about the price. This is like the difference between buying a basic appliance and buying something built to last. The upfront cost is higher. The long-term value in performance, in durability, in the fact that you won't be replacing it in 2 years, makes it the more economical choice over time. Buyers who own the Sonos Era 100 describe it the same way, again and again. Expensive, but the most complete experience. Nothing feels like a compromise. The voice commands respond the way they should. The sound fills the room the way you wanted it to. And 6 months later, it's still doing exactly what it did on day one. That is harder to find than it should be. And it's exactly what earns this one the top position. Not all smart speakers are built equal. Even when they're sitting side by side on the same store shelf, under the same bright lights, making the same claims on the box, what's inside those products and what your experience will actually be at home can be completely different. What this ranking really comes down to is 3 things: microphone quality, consistency of software support, and how honest the product is about what it actually does. The devices at the bottom of the list cut corners on all 3. The ones in the middle get 1 or 2 of those things right. The ones at the top make all 3 work together. And that's when a smart speaker stops being a gadget you tolerate and starts being something that genuinely improves your day. The store is not the problem. The wrong model is the problem. And the wrong model is easy to bring home when everything looks the same from the outside. Before you buy, think specifically about where this speaker is going to live. A quiet bedroom is a completely different environment from a busy kitchen or an open living room. A small space forgives weaker hardware. A larger space exposes it quickly. That one decision, where it's going and how you'll use it, usually determines whether you'll love the thing or return it within a week. Think about what you actually need it to do. If it's mostly reminders and timers, the mid-range options may be enough. If you care about music, if you want it to anchor your home, if you want something that holds up for years rather than months, invest higher on the list and you won't regret it. Drop a comment below with the smart speaker you're currently considering. Name the model, tell me where you saw it, and I'll tell you honestly whether it's a safe buy or a trap worth avoiding. And if this breakdown saved you from a purchase you would have regretted, hit subscribe, because the next comparison we're doing might save you even more.